Hey, welcome back to another episode of Franly Advice. Oh my God, you still here? This is crazy, but so excited. Okay, so I'm going to dive right into today's episode because it's pretty beastly. Like, I got a lot of notes. So you're going to see me going left, right a lot today just because I want to stay on track. Like, I don't want you to be distracted by my tangent rabbit hole thoughts. I want to make sure you get what was actually so good in how I wrote out this episode and how I have actually managed to escape some of the guilt of what is considered work-life balance, because it's not true. It's false. Like, there's no such thing as true work-life balance. There's a way to make them work in kind of like harmony with one another, but there's never a 50-50 split. And I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes one takes more of your attention than the other. And we're going to talk about how to really walk yourself through those times where you start to feel guilty about one taking you away from another. And we're going to talk about how to work through that. And at the end, I am going to give you actual action items on what to do to make all of this motivation actually actionable, which is one of my favorite things about having my podcast. So, as you know the drill, get out your notebooks. Let's get busy. All right, number one, balance looks different for everyone. You're going to see me look over here a lot today because I want to stay on track. I got some good stuff for you. Balance looks different for everyone. Balance isn't 50-50. It's very personal. Some people need 8 hours of sleep and some thrive on 5. My husband happens to be the one who can go to sleep for 3 hours, wake up and be a highly functioning human. Me, if I only get 5 hours of sleep, you'll notice. You'll know in the way I act, the way I sound, the way I carry myself that day. I need the full 8. I need a whole cycle. And that's okay. I personally also need 2 hours a day where there is no work and nothing needs to be done. Like, no one actually needs anything fully for me. And that's 2 hours a day. They're not two consecutive hours as of late. It's usually in the mornings, Ron will do the first 30 minutes by himself because it takes me a second to come to. And I really mean that. Mornings are so hard for me. It takes me a second to really get past the fog of the morning. And then another time of the day where I have that moment, it might be right after Trip comes home from school and Frankie's up, everybody's up. I might go spend 45 minutes to myself when Ron's off work and just listen to a book and just be with no one. And then go into the grocery store by myself. There's moments of time where I'm just alone. Your version of balance depends on the season of life you're in, your family's needs, and your personal strengths. I know I have ADHD. There's some things I'm just not good at. And it's okay. Balance is cyclical. It's not constant. Some seasons, my business needs more from me. When I launched this podcast, y'all needed a lot more from me. It's business. It took more of my time. It took me away from doing bedtime routine for a week. And there were some long nights to make sure I launched the podcast right, because I didn't do a video podcast the last time. And then there are some points where I just had to tell myself, this is perfectionism, just this is good enough. But you have to know it's cyclical, because right after doing a lot to launch for this podcast, there was another season of my life where people were sick at my house. You can hear it in my voice right now because we all have allergies and the pollen is back in Georgia. So other times my family needs more of my attention. So I have to scale back my business. And I beat myself up so much about last week's episode because the sound wasn't the best it could be. And I know how to level down between 2 different people and 2 different mics, but I didn't have the time. I only had the time to edit the video to make sure there was nothing in there that was crazy. At one point, I think I said something to Ron, I thought Frankie woke up during his nap while we were recording on this Saturday. And I was like, hey, did you hear that? So I needed to edit out things like that. And then also make sure it all made sense from start to finish. It left no time for me to edit sound. It left no time for me to be a perfectionist. And also, I haven't figured out my YouTube intro yet for my podcast. So they all just start. Each video just starts. And it's because I had to understand the season I was in. I don't have time right now to make all this work, or a team. So I scale back in my business whenever my family needs me again. And understanding the balance between the two is so beautiful and so freeing. you have to give yourself permission to let things shift. And expecting things to stay consistent will only make you feel guilty and shame. And you'll feel like you're behind in life. And I never want that for you. I don't want that for myself. But your balance today might look different from your balance next month. And that is okay. When you learn to embrace that this is not something that will ever be consistent, and it'll never be like perfect 50-50. There might be some glimmers of hope sometimes where it is 50-50, and that's nice to have, but it shouldn't be your expectation of yourself ever. So just remember, balance looks different for everyone. All right, number 2, the power of a flexible schedule. So you guys know I have this like intense schedule for my kids. It's intense to some people. It's pretty basic to me, but every 30 minutes is kind of planned out from the time they wake up until the time they go to bed. And it makes it easier on us to like decide where we can adjust things. So being a stay-at-home mom and an entrepreneur means flexibility, but it also means constant adjustment. So something I literally swear by, I can shift Frankie's nap, call in my sister, or block off my calendar for personal needs. So one of the biggest things about Frankie's nap is when I work, right? So Frankie was going to nap at 1 to 4. And I did that because I was like, okay, 4 is usually around the time Ron's done with work. He usually starts work by the time I wake up at like 7:30. I take over with the kids, and then he works from 7:30 to 4. And sometimes 5, depending on what's going on at his job. There was this big need for Frankie's nap to shift because I have to pick up Trip from school at 2:30. So I was like, okay, I kind of like can't have Frankie doing like a partial nap. So now I shifted Frankie's lunchtime to 11:30, and he goes to nap at 12, and he wakes back up around 3. So it gives me time to run down the street really quick to go pick up Trip, then come back, and we wake Frankie up. And usually, like, Ron's here if anything's going on with Frankie, but he's just napping, and he's an excellent napper, which is nice. So I just had to shift it, and that was okay. Like, our schedule is still intact. He still takes his nap. He just has to take it a little earlier, and he actually prefers it. It also oddly worked better for my clients, especially a lot of people who are still like at 9 to 5s. Their lunch break is when they talk to me now. So I was like, okay, this actually works much better for everyone. But having a schedule, it also means my schedule isn't always set in stone, and I have to tweak it weekly just to fit like what's going on in my personal life and my business life, and it changes as I need it to. As I said, I've had to call in my sister to take Frankie for his nap time because I needed to like actually go somewhere that wasn't close by, and Ron is still working. So I was like, can you just like monitor nap time for me? And she said yes, but it's like really important to remember that schedules provide flexibility. And then let's talk about what flexibility actually looks like for me in practice. Keeping client work within set hours, but adjusting those hours week to week is very helpful for me. So I know I'm generally going to work with my clients during nap time. But as I said before, I had to shift nap time by an hour. So I just had to call one of my clients and say like, hey, are you cool with changing your weekly meeting to 12 o'clock instead of 1? She was relieved and said, yes, this works out much better, right? So knowing that I have like blocks of time that are for my clients, but also remembering that I'm in charge of those hours as well. And then I also block off very high demand weeks on my calendar. So anytime I know like Trip's going to be out of school or we're going on vacation, I block it from my clients just to make sure they understand. And I try to give them enough heads up so they know I'm not available that week for much. And then also in my life, I'll block off high demand weeks to Ron. Like when I was launching the podcast, it's like, hey, I really need you to be done with work this week by 5 every day so you can take the boys, because I really need that time to like prepare for the podcast launch. And he said, no big deal, not a problem. I can do that. And it's not all the time. It's not that like I'm always needing to block these major weeks off for our family or our life for work or the other way around. It's just making sure it's known on my calendar. I also try to give myself permission to work odd hours when necessary. Again, the podcast lunch is really just like the most fresh, recent memory. I promise you, podcast lunching isn't this deep. It's just like, it just became a thing because I was also doing video for the first time. and editing by myself for the first time in a long time, like editing me for the first time by myself in a long time. Like it's been what, like 5 years since I edited it myself, because when I had my team, they would just edit me and I didn't have to listen to myself ramble. So it was a lot of adjustment. So there was some like late night hustle nights, and I had to tell myself, this isn't that deep, Fran, but I gave myself permission to work at night. Like, it's just 2 nights a week, not a big deal. You got it. You can do it. And then you want to make sure you know how to make a flexible schedule that actually works. So you got to identify your non-negotiables in your schedule. For us, non-negotiables are like the time I have like separated as my client work and Frankie's nap time. Non-negotiables. One, because Frankie is a menace to society if he doesn't take a nap. And two, because my business depends on my reputation. So I have to show up for my clients. So those two things are non-negotiables during the week, especially on like client heavy call days. And then create buffer times in your week. So for me, my buffer times are those 2 nights a week that I work. And also Fridays. I have Fridays blocked off from client calls, but it's still my work hours. It is my catch-up time. It is a catch-all moment for me to say like, okay, I had client calls Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday during nap time. Barely had any time to plan out next week's podcast episode. I need to sit down and do that today. Barely had any time to like send follow-ups for clients who have like action items. I need to make time for that today. So those are the kind of things that I make sure I add in a little buffer room for. And then I also get comfortable with shifting things as I need to without feeling guilty. There was a week where I didn't feel good last week. Frankie didn't feel good. Ron didn't feel good. Trip didn't feel good. Like it was just a disaster of a family week. And I had this one client call that was coming up, and it was like the end of the week. And I was like, I don't see us rounding this corner anytime soon. So I reached out to that client and I was just like, hey, I really need to shift you to next week, but we can have 2 calls next week. And you can also send me like Voxer notes if you really need to talk today. That's totally fine. I know you were like looking for me this week. And I was okay with it. I didn't feel any guilt because we were just sick. Like there's nothing I could really do about that. But that's like finding the true flexibility in your schedule. Okay, number 3. Now this is the real thing that like makes my schedule really work out for me. I'm like lighting up because I've done this for a decade now. I learned about it in 2015 at a work conference or something. I don't even know. It might have been like a boss who taught me this. I've known it so long that the memory of where I got it from is hazy, but I know it's not an original thought, but I've used it so much. All right. So I use the prioritization model of urgent and important. So I swear by this. I swear by it for organizing my business and my life. Instead of trying to do it all and like doing to-do lists, like big brain dumps, which I still find myself sometimes trying to cycle back into, I put things into these 4 categories. Number 1, urgent and important. It can't be skipped. This task, it can't be delayed. It could be something like a client deadline or a doctor's appointment that we cannot miss. But these tasks, they got to get done. They got to get done expeditiously. It's T.I. would say. Number 2, urgent plus unimportant. These are things that need to be done, but isn't life-changing. So like household tasks, admin work, they're like very urgent. Like the house needs to be clean, but it's not high on the important list. Number 3, important plus not urgent. So this is things that are like necessary but not time sensitive. So this could be content creation, business strategy, or like for me, filling out the form for my kids for pre-K school. Like it is important, but currently not urgent because it's down the road. And then number 4 is not urgent, not important, the lowest of priorities. These are things that are like extra projects, like dream projects. So like my wall, for instance, this was not urgent. It was not important. I just wanted to do it. And it took us we lived in this house for like a year and a half before it was done, but I had talked about it as soon as we bought the house. It was not urgent, not important, but it was a very nice project to do and to finish. We didn't do it. Our friend did, but it was a nice project to finally figure out how to do it. And this could be things like busy work that doesn't really move the needle. So my wall quite literally does not move the needle for like house chores and tasks. For us, it was just kind of like a nice to have. That's usually what a not urgent, not important thing is. And then how this helps me stay sane. Instead of stressing about everything, I focus on what actually matters each week. I give myself permission to not do things that are not urgent or important. And that's okay. Like, I gave myself permission to slowly put my office together. Like, if I were to swivel the camera around, you would be like, oh, this office is barren. It is a barren land here. But it's not urgent or important. It's just something that I want to get to eventually. So if I'm prioritizing my week, I don't add my office and like the decor in here into it right now. All right. Number 4, adjusting when balance feels off. So there are times where I feel like no matter how much I use that prioritization model, no matter how much I like don't shame myself and I don't feel guilt, I'm still kind of like off and like just missing things. Whenever I'm out of sync, I check in with my self-care. That's usually what it is. It's usually like I'm going so hard, like getting all the things done and trying to keep the balance in my life. I laugh because I'm reading a fantasy book where it's all about like keeping the balance between the living and the dead. Anyway, whatever. So whenever it feels out of sync, I know I need to circle back to self-care. And then I just know if I'm like out of sync or I just need to stop. I've just been pouring too much into others than me. If I'm feeling off, I add in little like refill moments for my cup. So I take a longer shower. I love a long shower. With no one knocking on the door, no one bothering me, just a really long shower. And or I'll take a quick shower and then a long bath because that is also a really fun jam. Or I'll take a solo drive to the store, complete silence or my favorite audiobook, and I'll go past the Kroger that is closest to me and go to one that's like 15 minutes away just to give myself more alone time in the car, which some of y'all are like, that's crazy. It is, but it works. It helps me reset. It helps me find my center and I feel much better. And sometimes I even find myself like using that time to pray. And then the other thing I'll do is book a last minute date night or girls' night. I am quick to text my friends in our WhatsApp group and say, hey, does anybody want to come over tonight? I'm about to buy some food and watch Love is Blind or something. And I have like a really quick girls' night that quickly refills me and makes me feel like myself again and like I know what I'm doing. Balance isn't about everything being right. It's about making sure you don't lose yourself in the process. Business will always be there. My family will always be here. But I have to take care of myself to enjoy both. Otherwise, like, what am I doing? Why am I even like trying to make it a goal to balance my time between my work and my kids and my family if I'm not even taking care of who I am as a person anyway? Okay, so it's time. You ready? You got your notebook? You got your pen? Scurry and get it because we're getting to work, girls. Your action steps for this week is just going to be a simple shift for a better balance. Not a perfect one. That doesn't exist, but a better one. Let's put this all into action. If you feel like your work-life balance is out of whack, here's a super simple challenge that you can do to help you reset this week. We're resetting this week, okay? Let's go. Sunday night brain dump. Write every damn thing down that is on your plate at work, that is on your plate at home, that is like just been shuffling around in your head about your house. Write it all down. Get some deadlines. Make sure we know the exact appointment times things have to happen. The to-dos that feel overwhelming, let's just like jot it all down. I don't care if that list is 100 items long. Write every single thing down on Sunday night. You can pause this right here. Write that all out before we go to the next part. Or you can, just take it all in through osmosis, whatever works for you. Number 2, you are going to prioritize using the urgent and important model. You are going to take every single task and sort them into these 4 categories. Let's do a refresher of the 4 categories. 1 is urgent plus important. Get it done ASAP. Needs to be done like it's a hairy item. We want to get that done like immediately this week. 2, urgent plus unimportant. If possible, this category, let's figure out who we can delegate it to. If it's a household chore, Can your partner or your kids or someone else who lives in the house take it on for the week? If it's in your business and you have someone who works under you in your agency, can they actually be trusted to do this task or handle this task? Let's delegate these where we can, because they need to get done, but they're not like as super important. Number 3, important plus not urgent. Schedule it for later. So this could be something like content creation, deep work within your business, or think like for me, it's like making sure Trip understands the difference between an A and a Z. So it is important, but not currently urgent in his timeline at school. So number 4 is not urgent, not important. Probably doesn't have to happen like this week, maybe not even at all. It might just be a nice to have, but that's the 4th category. All right, now we are going to plan your Monday and the rest of your week. So Monday, we are going to pick the hairiest, most nasty, urgent, and important tasks that you need to get done. I know that sounds awful to kick your Monday off like that, but we don't want to kick it down the road. We don't want to play kick the can with those things. So on Monday, we're going to do one very urgent and important task that you are overwhelmed by, plus one really cute, easy task that you can knock out that might be something that's more like important but not urgent, right? So give yourself a mix of those two. And then we're going to peanut butter spread all the rest of the tasks throughout the week. We're not going to overload one day. We're not going to say we're getting this all done on Monday. No, we're getting one very urgent thing done and one easy thing done on Monday for sure. Then we're going to spread everything else out. No overloading. Have a nice to have list, just so you're not trying to put all of these 100 tasks into these 5 days. So we're going to like set the 5 days up logically based on the time you have available to do those tasks. And then we're going to make this nice to have list for extra tasks. These are the things that would be great to be done, but aren't deal breakers if they don't happen. And then we're going to create a next week's problems list. Truly next week's problem. So stop overwhelming yourself with things that don't actually have anything to do with getting done, that don't need to be done this week. So for anything that has a deadline that is outside of this week, punt that baby. For anything that is not urgent and not important, punt that guy. We want to make sure this week we actually get everything done that we put on this list. And the clearest cut way to do that is making sure we're not overloading ourselves and moving things appropriately to next week's problem instead of trying to inherit all of it for this week. So finally, for 1 week, you stick to this plan. Don't let guilt pull you into doing all the things. Do not feel like the whole to-do list you created at the first step is what the goal is to get complete this week. That's not true. Not what I'm saying. Do not try to get it all done. If you finish your priorities for the day, enjoy your free time. Go outside, touch grass, as the kids say. Don't let yourself work yourself into the ground. Like, be human, get some tasks done, knock them out, and then hang out, chill out. Find you 2 hours to take your long ass shower. Whatever it is that refills your cup, do that. But embrace your free time. Don't give it up for one of the tasks. Give yourself grace. Some days will go off track. They will go off the deep end. Do not worry about it. Do not fret. Just keep it moving. Don't linger on like if it's Monday and you're supposed to be doing like your big hairy item and you can't actually do it because someone in your house got sick or something in your business blew up that you didn't even see coming. Do not linger on it. Just move it. Shift everything down, like move it to Tuesday or move it to Wednesday, however far out you need to move it. Don't sit in that guilt for too long. Keep moving, keep trucking. We can't let like ourselves lose the momentum. Once you lose the momentum, it's going to be hard to get you going again. Okay. All right. Let's talk about a quick summary for the episode because that was a lot. That was a big deep dive. So number 1, the biggest lesson, stop chasing the idea of perfect balance. It doesn't exist. It's a lie. Instead, create a routine that fits your life, not mine. I've given you guys examples of my schedule before on Instagram. That does not have to be your schedule. It is just an example, not the blueprint. Allow your version of balance to change with your seasons. So my version of balance with one kid is very different than my version of balance with two. Use prioritization tools like the urgent and important model to manage your workload. You can't do it all. Don't try to do it all. And when in doubt, check in with yourself and make sure you are still a priority and not just your work and family. Okay, if this episode resonated with you in any kind of way, share it with a fellow mompreneur or just a friend who needs to remember that their work is not their life and their life can sometimes take a back seat to their work, and that's okay. DM me on Instagram if you're like, oh, I want to talk about this more. This is a topic that I find so interesting. I would love to go back and forth via voice notes or just text to talk about it. And then if you don't already, subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can subscribe. But that's it for today. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next week on another episode of Franly Advice. Bye.